I could ask the Minister to respond to the question in the first instance before I respond to his content.
You're forsaken under 30 seconds?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Deputy, the first progress report of the Just Transition Commissioner, Mr Kieran Mulvey, was published on the 22nd of May last. The report reflects a comprehensive engagement with relevant stakeholders in the Midlands, setting out the analysis of the challenge facing the region and for Bord na Móna workers, their families and communities arising from an accelerated exit from peat harvesting. The report contains important recommendations. The Government is already acting on a number of these and is committed to preparing an implementation plan to address the remainder, which I intend to publish in the coming weeks. The recommendations and associated actions will support job creation efforts and create new opportunities for Bord na Móna workers in the Midlands. A number of actions are already underway which would support job creation. This includes €20 million for a new energy efficiency retrofitting scheme in the Midlands and €5 million for peatland rehabilitation outside of the Bord na Móna estate. A dedicated Just Transition Fund is making available up to €11 million in 2020 to fund innovative projects that contribute to the economic, social and environmental sustainability of the wider Midland regions, and which have employment and enterprise potential. On foot of its recent calls for proposals under this fund, my department published an initial list of 16 successful projects on the 9th of September last, and additional projects will be approved in the next few weeks. The Government has also committed €15 million as part of the July stimulus plan in order to commence a multi-year programme to rehabilitate 30,000 hectares of Bord na Móna peatlands. This additional funding will support a just transition by maintaining jobs in the Midlands, as well as laying the foundation for more sustainable job creation into the future. The enhanced rehabilitation scheme will reduce greenhouse gas emissions by significantly increasing the area of wetland habitats in post-production peatlands. Further additional benefits include increasing biodiversity, improving water quality and supporting bog ecosystem services. In addition, following up from the recommendation of the first report of the Just Transition Commissioner and the commitment in the programme for Government, a feasibility study into the establishment of a green energy hub using the existing infrastructure in the West Offaly and Loughree power plants will commence shortly. A steering group has been established which will be chaired by the ESB and include representatives of my department, Bord na Móna, relevant local authorities and other stakeholders. I expect the work of the group to be completed this year.
I thank the Minister for his response, and I acknowledge the progress that has been made to date on foot of the arrangements emanating from last year's budget and other commitments which I know are contained within the programme for government. Will build upon that, and we expect and welcome and look forward to commitments in the budget in addition to the funding that has been provided and alluded to by the Minister to date. I want to focus specifically on the final element of his answer, talking about the provision and the exploratory process of identifying or providing green energy hubs using the existing infrastructure and the power plants in Loughree and West Offaly, namely Lanesborough and Shannon Bridge. Unfortunately, as I alluded to on the 22nd of July when I raised this with you, Minister, the prospect of ESB seeking tenders for the demolition of that plant, that has now come to fruition, unfortunately, and last week they published such tender documents. This flies in the face of the commitment that we had understood was in place. This jeopardises the potential for alternative industry, alternative employment and alternative prospects for those two particular locations and indeed the region if ESB is allowed to proceed. So I want to hear from you tonight on the floor of the House, following I have made the same plea back in the 22nd of July. What prospect is there now on the part of government, insofar as it has dealings with ESB, to ask them to refrain from continuing with this course of action and allow an opportunity, allow a window of opportunity or a time frame whereby a competition might be forthcoming from the private or public sector interests in order to ascertain what best use would be evolved from such a process in order to ensure that there are alternative job prospects, alternative prospects for the well-being of the communities involved.
Thank you, Deputy Cowen. And since, I think, speaking at that time, I've had meetings with Kieran Mulvey, with the ESB, with the Mayor and Manager of Offaly Council. So I am absolutely fully aware of the concern of this, and particularly with regard to the issue of the two plants. I'm sure, Deputy, you're fully aware that the only reason, the reason why there had to be the advertising of tenders for the removal of the existing plant was because that was a condition of the original planning permission. But the European Commission or tendering process in that regard does not commit the ESB to any course of action regarding the future use of the sites, and doesn't prejudge the outcome of the feasibility study into the possible establishment of a green energy hub or a renewable energy hub on either site. So it would be obviously preferable, given the grid connections that exist, given the expertise exists within Bord na Móna and within the region in the area of logistics and energy management, that rather than decommissioning or simply decommission the sites, that alternative uses, whichever they may be, and I don't think we should prejudge that, I don't think we should preclude that. I've heard a variety of different suggestions, not just in regard to the energy area, but also waste management and other areas. So my instinct is better for us to see what proposals arise out of that, to let the working group do their work, as I said, and to not rule out any option. And as I think I said in the if I can finish, because it's an important point, Kirlick, in our discussion of the Climate Fund, that if there is good applications coming through, that I'm sure funding would arise to be able to support them.
Okay, well, obviously, applications for such funding cannot be forthcoming because there's no potential for a legal interest in the applicant while the present situation continues. And while I accept the bona fides of your response, I would have thought it would be possible for ESB to make an application for retention of permission to retain the structures which would supersede the previous permission and the conditions associated with it. But if I am to take at face value what you're saying to me, is that despite the publication and the seeking of tenders for its demolition, as was publicised last week, ESB may not well act upon any such submissions that they might receive, and it would be folly on the part of any such commercial operation to seek or to provide or a tender in the knowledge that you as Minister have informed the House now that the prospect of Green Energy Hub remains alive, the prospect of the potential for an open competition from the wider public for you or the ESB to ascertain its benefit to the community in offering alternatives that might well benefit the region, rather than the semblance of a semi-state body demolishing something that cost many hundreds of millions of euros in the last 10 to 20 years, but more to the point, demolishing the prospect of alternatives which might well yield a much better result than the prospect of demolition would provide.
DSB were required to put that advert in as a condition of a planning permission, and they have to operate within the law. And yes, we should be open to other alternative uses. The reality is, in terms of the actual plant itself, is that what other applications or what other uses a plant which are very specifically designed, built and has been operated for 18 years for one use, how that can be repurposed or reconditioned for another use is beyond something that I don't have a clear example or an international or elsewhere of where such very specific infrastructure can be repurposed. But the sites have other characteristics, as I said, including grid connection, and if there can be found a use, be it for the boiler, be it for the other equipment on the site, which could be part of a new energy hub, certainly we should look at that. But as I said, we shouldn't restrict the options, because it seems to me that far more likely is potentially other applications which aren't the reintroduction of the exact same power plants. It will have to be something that provides a much more secure long-term future. That would investing in something which isn't going to be viable or doesn't make best use of the sites wouldn't serve the local community.